So today we're diving headfirst into the dark side of history. And I mean really dark. It's a grim topic for sure, but you kind of have to understand it to get the full picture of human justice. We're about to explore some of the most brutal, most calculated, and honestly, most terrifying punishments that people ever came up with. And let me be really clear right from the start. None of this is make-believe. This is the stuff they definitely don't teach you in school. A time when justice wasn't just a sentence, it was a public show of absolute, unimaginable suffering. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the pure biological horror of the boats in ancient Persia. Then we'll jump over to see the mechanical cruelty of the Greek Brazen Bull. From there, it's off to Imperial China for the infamous Thousand Cuts. After that, we'll see how massive empires like Rome and England punish crimes against the state. And we'll wrap it all up by asking a really important question about where we are today.
Right, so our first stop is ancient Persia, with a method of execution that is so horrifying it sounds like something out of a nightmare. It was called scaphism.
The idea, also known as the boats, was as simple as it was evil. It basically weaponized nature to cause a slow, agonizing death. The point wasn't just to kill someone, it was to completely and utterly destroy them. The whole process was just a masterclass in cruelty. The victim was basically turned into a living, breathing nest. They'd force-feed them milk and honey, which would cause horrible diarrhea inside the boats, creating this foul breeding ground. Then they'd smear more honey all over their skin to attract every insect in the area. Vermin would lay eggs in their eyes, their nose, anywhere they could, and the maggots would hatch and start eating the person alive from the inside out. And this is what's so effective and so horrifying about it. The daily force feedings weren't mercy, no way. They were a tool to keep the person alive, just to prolong the suffering. The historian Plutarch actually documented the case of a soldier, a guy named Mithridates, who endured this for 17 days. Just think about that, 17 days of being eaten alive. Okay, let's shift gears and head over to ancient Greece, where some real creative genius and pure cruelty came together to build a truly hellish machine. And this was it, the Brazen Bull. It was basically a work of art turned into a torture device. You'd place a person inside the hollow statue, bolt the door shut, and light a fire underneath. The bronze would slowly heat up, turning the whole thing into an oven. But here's the sickest part. The inventor added a special feature. A whole system of tubes was built into the bull's head. So as the person inside was screaming in agony from the heat, these tubes would warp and amplify the sound. To everyone outside, it just sounded like an angry, bellowing bull. It was literally designed to turn human suffering into a grotesque concert. You know, the story of the bull actually has this grim, ironic twist. When the inventor, Pericles, showed off his new machine to the tyrant Phalaris, Phalaris was like, wow, cool. Prove it works. He told Pericles to climb inside to demonstrate how the sounds worked. As soon as he was in, Phalaris locked the door and lit the fire, making the inventor the very first victim of his own monstrous creation. All right, now we're going to jump forward in time to Imperial China to talk about a punishment known as Ling Chi. You might know it as death by 1,000 cuts. And this wasn't some brief, crazy phase in history. Ling Chi was used for almost 1,000 years. 1,000 years, all the way up to 1905. The fact that it lasted so long tells you just how effective people thought it was as a way to keep control. The whole point of Ling Chi was not a quick death. It was the exact opposite. It was a performance. It was a form of torture elevated to an art, all designed to create as much pain and fear as possible while keeping the person conscious for every single second. The process itself was chillingly precise. The executioner would make these small, shallow cuts, removing bits and pieces of the body one by one, usually starting with the fingers or the nose. They tried to avoid hitting major arteries because that would mean a quicker death from blood loss. And get this, sometimes they'd even give the victim opium. Not for mercy, but to make sure they wouldn't pass out from the pain and miss any of their own dismemberment. So next up, let's look at punishments that were saved for what governments considered the absolute worst crimes you could commit, betraying your family or your country. And we'll see how two very different empires, ancient Rome and medieval England, handled it.
In Rome, if you killed your own parent, well, that was seen as an attack on the very fabric of society. The punishment for that was called pona cule, the punishment of the sack, and it was this uniquely symbolic and terrifying way to go. And the symbolism here was everything. The animals they chose were not random at all. They'd sew a dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey into the leather sack with you. Each animal represented a different, twisted part of the crime. It turned the execution into this dark, living nightmare, as all these terrified animals would just go crazy inside the bag as it sank.
Now, over in England, if you committed high treason against the king or queen, this infamous punishment was waiting for you. It wasn't just one way to die. It was a whole sequence of tortures, all done in public as the ultimate warning to anyone else thinking about rebellion. This whole four-part process was a masterclass in state-sponsored terror. First, they tie you to a horse and drag you through the streets. Then, you're hanged, but they cut you down while you're still alive. Then comes the drawn part, where you're disemboweled, sometimes forced to watch your own insides being pulled out. Finally, you were quartered, your body chopped up, and the pieces were sent to different corners of the country. Every single step was a brutal message. This is what happens when you cross us.
So after going through all of these just horrific moments in history, you have to stop and ask the really big question. Why? What was the point of all this elaborate, theatrical cruelty?
Well, there were a few reasons. Sometimes there was this religious idea that extreme pain could somehow purify a person's soul. On a more practical level, these public displays were meant to be a terrifying warning to everyone else. But more than anything, they were a raw, brutal demonstration of state power. It was the government showing everyone, in the clearest way possible, that they had absolute control over your life, your body, and even your death.
And that really brings us to our final thought. It's so easy for us to look back at this stuff with disgust and pat ourselves on the back for how civilized we are now. But are we? The core reasons for this cruelty, scaring people, demonstrating power, believing that some people just deserve to suffer, have those ideas really vanished? History like this is supposed to be disturbing. It's a reminder of what we're capable of, and it forces us to ask a tough question. Are we really all that different today?